Hi, and welcome to the Law Center videocast. I'm Larry DeMarco, your host and founder of the Law Center, the largest network of the best trial lawyers in the country, and founder of the Law Center YouTube channel and online resources of free educational legal videos for self-represented litigants in child custody court. See the description portion of this video for more information. Today, we are here with Dr. Edward Stevens, an internationally recognized physician and psychiatrist. He's produced a stream of programs about men, women, and families, and has an intense awareness that men and boys have become the neglected other half of gender, according to the World Bank. With no presence of male studies in higher education and falling prospects globally to the detriment of all, he created an educational initiative that would be apolitical, rigorous, and inclusive. Today, male studies, a new academic discipline, and the foundation of male studies support these efforts. Dr. Stevens, thank you for being a guest on the Law Center videocast. Welcome.
Good morning, Larry. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, delighted to have you as well. So, Dr. Stevens, please tell our viewers, why are you passionate about this topic, male studies?
Well, it all starts with being a physician. And as a physician, and in particular as a psychiatrist, I'm well aware that people have lives and they have health. And the struggle is to make their lives happen. And what I discovered was in my mental health work as a psychiatrist that this was really doable by helping people to improve their skills. And then in my work with men and boys over the years, what I discovered was that they had very, very special problems that they were coming up against that no one was paying any attention to, because after all, boys will be boys and the men were just being men. And so people were writing them off as bad prospects.
Tell us about your nonprofit, the Foundation for Male Studies. What is it and what's its mission?
Well, as I began to realize that the boys and men were really at a disadvantage, and I began to understand all the efforts that went into women and girls over the last half century, I realized that what we needed was an educational effort on behalf of boys and men. We needed some apolitical, scientific, rigorous investigation of the causes of the difficulty for the decline of the male at all levels. And we really needed to go at this in a way that brought our social science to bear on it, that brought our complete range of disciplines to look into the questions of what was going on that was really defeating the prospects for men and boys in our society. And frankly, when the prospects for men and boys are diminished, that means the prospects for wives are diminished, the prospects for families are diminished, the prospects for society is diminished. So this is not a throwaway. This was something that I felt really required an academic discipline of male studies.
So I'm going to give you somewhat of an unfair question, and I recognize that, but can you give us the short answer? Either the 2 minute, the 1 to 2, maybe 3 minute answer of what's going on, of you're laughing and I appreciate your laughter there, but can you just give a taste of what is going on?
Well, if you take a look at the boys in education, all the statistics, not just nationally, but internationally, show that boys are doing less well at all levels of education. That puts them at a disadvantage right along the way, right from the get-go. They do less well in school, fewer attend college, the job prospects are diminished. This is a big drag on the economy. In terms of men, we see that there's, as it relates to family, there's a fatherhood gap. Uh, Men are uh, not participating in marriage as often as they had. The 50% divorce rate, and in the divorces, the fathers lose connection to their children. The average is that within 3 years of a divorce and the custodial arrangements that are traditional, fathers lose complete contact with their children. So, from the family point of view, there's that, and from the economic point of view, right now in the United States, there are fewer men working in the economy than at any other time in our national history. So this does represent an absolute across-the-board decline, which has implications for all of us. This isn't just about boys and men. This is about all. I mean, because, you know, recently there was some information published about the number of women graduating with bachelor's degrees versus the number of men, and there were 250,000 more women graduating with bachelor degrees. And we know that our college enrollment these days is about 60 to 70% women versus 30 to 40% men. And so what does this say? That says, where are the educated women going to find educated men to start their families? So these are the broad strokes, and this is what has to be studied and has to be remedied if we're going to move ahead with any semblance of reasonable equality in our society.
So practically, what are your duties? What do you personally do, and what have you done to advance male studies and to educate people about males and their problems?
Well, you know, as a working psychiatrist with over a half a century of experience, I looked at places that I might be able to make a difference personally, because I'm not in academics, I'm not an academician, and although I have the aspirations that we could have male studies, I said, well, what can I do? And what can I do came down to my own personal experience with my life as a young father, and with the pregnancies with my wife. And I realized half a century after it happened that I was depressed in and around the birth of my first child. And that had enormous implications for the well-being of my wife and the outcome for my children, healthy children. So I thought what I could do is to trade on my own personal experience. And I titled the intervention Bringing the Father into Pregnancy, because I realized from talking to fathers that they drive their wives to the obstetrician and they sit in the waiting room, and then the mother comes out, and they're passionate about supporting their wife and being part of the pregnancy. They're passionate about it, but there's no active involvement on the part of the physician and the medical institution to incorporate the fathers into this process. So I said, bringing the fathers into pregnancy. And what did that mean? For me, it meant having the father have a meaningful presence there in those visits to the obstetrician. What did that mean? Well, there's a medical record for the mother. Let's create a medical record for the father. And what does that mean? Well, we need a questionnaire for the father, a questionnaire that gets to his sense of readiness for for father, a sense of his emotional investment in it, his sense of connection. And that's just, it's called the epigenetics of it. In other words, what's going on with the father in and around his life. But there's also the genetics of it. In other words, whereas Papa, well, Papa's there in every pregnancy because he's 50% of the genetics of the newborn. So I worked on this for years by researching the literature on peripartum depression, depression in, on, and around pregnancy. And
let me jump in here, doctor, if I can ask you something, because you talked about personal depression, and now you're talking about male depression, which I never heard of until I met you. Postpartum depression, which is on everyone's radar, and men and women are both different sexes, but they're also people. Is this related? This male this depression after childbirth, is that similar in any way?
well, Larry, it's very interesting. When we look at the numbers, there's something like, we'll say conservatively, 14% of women experience postpartum depression.
14?
Now,
14%?
14%. And I'm going to say conservatively, 10% of men do. Well, as I looked at the literature over decades, there were 10 to 15 articles on postpartum depression in women. And there was one article that had to do with anything that had to do with men. So that, as a matter of fact, just a year or so ago, I talked to the obstetrician of 30 years experience at my hospital. And I asked her, what did she know about depression in men, postpartum depression in men? She said, what's that? Oh my God. So it hasn't even been on the radar. To me, it felt like it's a disease that's yet to be discovered. That men get depressed or emotionally upended. Doesn't necessarily have to be depression. They can be worried and stressed. How am I going to take care of the new responsibilities? One of the questions in my medical record that I created for the men was, do you feel you have job security? Men going into a family situation for the first time, if they don't feel they have job security, right away there's a real propensity for an obsessive worry that can really be debilitating. So to your question, because I can't do the academic part of this myself, but I can do what I can and I know best as a psychiatrist. I created a questionnaire for men to be given and to become part of the record, the medical record, so that the man is right there with the pregnancy. And one of the wonderful things about this is, in my years as a psychiatrist, I saw many men and women after the delivery. That's why they call it postpartum depression. And they were depressed, upset. But with this questionnaire, I tried to create a situation where we could preempt the problem. Now, preempt it in the sense that we begin to get some idea ahead of time of the possibilities for a man to have an emotional upheaval in response to pregnancy. Now,
so let me break down if I can, doctor, let me break down everything that you're saying. What I heard was you recognize a need for male studies because it's not there. And when you told us about you getting involved in that, you recognize from your own experience from childbirth for your own children that you had felt a depression and that there was this glaring need to involve fathers, and there were no resources, and this wasn't on anyone's radar. And you then developed this questionnaire as your project and your endeavor for male studies, or basically to involve fathers in the pregnancy process.
Yes, yes. Now,
So you're going into. Go ahead.
Without you asking another question, I'm going to tell you what the importance of all this is, in addition to doing something for the fathers so that they can really be part of it.
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth. Go ahead, please. Why do this? What is this importance?
What's important about this is, if the mother is depressed, there's a 50% chance the father will be depressed. If the father is depressed, there's a 50% chance the mother will be depressed. We do not walk on one leg. We walk on two legs. Anyone that's walking on one leg is hopping.
And with any family, there's a man and a woman, two legs, two parts operating as a whole.
That's right. So, and what this does is, if there are some difficulties with the male partner, it's definitely going to affect the mother, and it's going to affect the children. So we preempt that, and it benefits all. So this inclusion of the father is something that, one of the difficulties I've run into over the years is, every time I talked about male studies, or people have said it's always been about men. It's always been about men. And I said, well, wait a minute, this isn't a zero-sum game. What we're working on is some help for the boys and the men, because it really has important nuances for women. So it's not a zero-sum game. In other words, if anything happens to either one of the partners, it happens to both of them.
So you mentioned this questionnaire. Why is it important, and what is your goal? Because my son was born 8 years ago, and there was no quote unquote questionnaire. I held my wife's hand and brought her, but I was basically ignored. Now, thank God, there was no issue where we celebrated. I did not have that problem. But what is your goal of all your efforts related to this questionnaire?
Well, my goal is to have this become a standard medical procedure, a standard, I call it a new standard of care. In other words, that the father would be felt to be as an important part of the preparation for pregnancy as the care of the mother. And I want this to be installed in every facility, not just in the United States, but frankly across the world. It may sound grandiose, but frankly, if you stop and think about it, if we develop a vaccine for COVID, for instance, here, COVID's around the world. If there are problems for men here, men are having problems around the world. So and this also catches the spirit of doing something that has real significance for men that is apolitical. There's nothing political about this.
So let me ask you, you touched on it, but now I want you to tell us specifically, and what benefit will that bring? Why should we do this?
Well, we're always concerned about our environment. The air we breathe, the water we drink, having enough food and whatnot. Well, I think that what we're talking about is an environment, a healthy environment for boys and men and families that will redound to the benefit of society. Right now, where we have boys struggling men underachieving, and in this particular situation, men not being given their rightful place in the pregnancy and in fatherhood. It really makes a difference. It creates an environment, an emotional environment, a family environment that's unhealthy.
If you ignore the family, and what I hear you saying is that this questionnaire will create greater father family involvement and would recognize the importance of both parents, mother and father, in the strength and support of a child.
That's that's the picture, and it's fascinating. I presented this, and you got it because I can present it to many people, and they don't get it. They keep saying, "Oh, wait a minute, that's all about fathers. What about we got to take care of the mothers?" Oh, what, who says that taking care of the fathers is not taking care of the mothers?
Well, so then let me ask you this. What science, research, or other support is there for doing exactly what you're doing, including men in pregnancy treatment? Because this questionnaire is when the woman comes in and speaks to her OBGYN, you're saying part of that treatment should be including the father. What research is there behind this?
Well, I said there were 15 articles on women to every one on men, but over the course of 10 years, we might have managed to get about a body of maybe 100 papers on research connected to this. And I went through those papers and I took the elements from them that were really significant to include them in the questionnaire, so that there was a pretty good picture of the likelihood of a man having difficulties. I'll just mention one question in particular. Are you under 25? Now, that might seem like a throwaway, but a new father under 25 has a 50% chance of having emotional difficulties.
Interesting. So let's look ahead then, doctor. Let's say you get this done. Let's say that now we train and require doctors to include this questionnaire or a substantial portion of them in pregnancy treatment. If you accomplish that, what would it mean for children and families and fathers to have this questionnaire be part of care, perinatal care?
Well, another aspect of this is thinking about fatherhood in general and where the sore points are in our society. And in particular, 80 to 90% of our incarcerated men experience fatherlessness at some point in their lives, or perhaps as an ongoing issue. And I thought if there was any one thing that would make a difference to every community, but to communities of color in particular, where father inclusion is very critical and a critical loss, it would be to try and recognize the father right from the get-go. I thought that this would have a very important psychological effect of binding the man to the mother, to the family. And then you say, well, what does this mean? Well, we know that both boys and girls do better when they have father involvement, when they have a connection to the father, in addition to the healthy connection to the mother. So anything that promotes fatherhood, promotes the connection of the father to the family, the father to the infant, definitely improves our overall social well-being.
Doctor, thank you for all of this. How can people learn more about you, your foundation, and get involved in helping if they believe in this? Specifically, where can we find more information about you online?
Well, the Foundation for Male Studies has a wonderful site that's replete with resources, full of resources, all kinds of books and articles, and some of my own essays. And it can be reached by going to malestudies.org. Now, when you Google it sometimes, it does MAIL. No, this is MALE, malestudies.org. And when you go there, you'll really get everything you need to know. Now, how can people help personally? You know, from the very beginning, about 20 years ago when I started the foundation, I put a request out there for some benefactor to put up $5 or $10 million to create a chair for a Department of Male Studies at a major university. No one's taken me up on that yet. But what I have done is I received donations from interested people and people that have benefited from this over the years. And that's really basically what's kept me going. The other thing that's kept me going, frankly, is me. I would work and see patients and then take my fees from seeing patients and put them as a donation into the foundation. So I am the foundation's major contributor. I hope that I can expand this because if people really see the value of it, they will want to not just give something, but to be involved. And just as I involve myself in my own profession with my own experience, each person can involve themselves in their own way, in their own community, with this awareness of the decline of the prospects for boys and men and the fact that we can do something about it.
And I'll also add that I am also the executive manager of the International Council for Men and Boys. We can raise awareness for 12 items of male inequality by, again, raising awareness and going to menandboys.net. Sign up, join the wave, get notices and our press releases of our organization. We also have policies and solutions to have greater father-family involvement and address the needs and all the areas of disadvantage that you were talking about here in the show. We also talk about that on that website as well. Doctor, listen, let's leave it there. That's all we have time for, but I want to thank you for being a guest on the Law Center videocast.
It was my deep pleasure, and I hope that our listeners will take heart and begin to make a difference on behalf of the boys and men in ways that they never even had thought of before.
Doctor, it's been an honor and pleasure to have you as well. We've been here with Dr. Ed Stevens, and I am your host, Larry DeMarco. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, share, like, comment, and click the notification bell next to the subscribe button to be alerted of new videos. Check the description portion of this video where you can learn more about Dr. Stevens and the founder of Male Studies. This video has been brought to you by the Law Center, the largest network of the best trial lawyers in the United States. Click the description portion of this video to learn more about it. Signing off. Tune in next time. Bye for now.